You know, you always think the biggest events in history happen somewhere else, to other people. But sometimes, war doesn't just knock on your door. It blows it right off the hinges. And that's exactly what happened in this small community of Plymstock during World War II.
So what happens when war lands on your doorstep? I mean, it's a question we all hope we never have to seriously consider, right? But for the folks in this town, it wasn't some hypothetical. It was their reality every single day for 6 long years. This is that story. The story of how a totally ordinary community stared down an extraordinary threat right there in their own backyards.
All right, so before the bombs even started to fall, there was this quiet period of preparation. It must have been so unsettling. You could feel the whole fabric of normal life being completely rewoven for war. The entire community had to get ready for something they couldn't even really imagine.
And who's the first line of defense? It wasn't soldiers in uniform. It was your neighbors. The ARP, which stood for Air Raid Precautions, was basically a volunteer army of local people. These wardens, they were trained to do everything from guiding you to a shelter, to making sure your blackout curtains were drawn, to giving first aid. They were literally the guardians of their own streets.
And man, things changed fast. I mean, completely. Just try to imagine this. Your entire world is plunged into total darkness every single night. All the street signs and signposts ripped down, so your own hometown suddenly feels unfamiliar. And this was all to confuse any potential invaders. Even the sounds of daily life changed. The church bells, which you'd hear every day, were silenced. The only time they would ring was for the most terrifying reason imaginable: invasion.
So, the war effort literally came home, right into the family garden. These things, Anderson shelters, they were basically corrugated iron sheds half buried in the ground, and they popped up in almost every backyard. Look at this ad from 1940. It's actually showing people how to furnish their shelter. It's such a grim but fascinating detail, isn't it? This cramped, probably damp, little space was now a normal part of family life.
Okay, so all this preparation, it was all leading up to the terrifying reality. The drills, the blackouts, that's one thing. But pretty soon, the war wasn't just some abstract threat anymore. It became a very real, deafening roar in the skies right above Plymstock. 65. Yeah, just a number on a screen. But think about what's behind that number. A story of pure terror, incredible endurance, and so many sleepless nights.
Because what 65 means is that this wasn't just a one-off thing. This was a relentless, drawn-out assault. 65 different times the sirens wailed, 65 times families had to scramble for shelter while their town was being attacked from the sky. This constant threat, it became the horrifying rhythm of their lives. And you can see here, the targets were strategic. These images, wow, they really show the devastation. On the left, you've got the naval oil tanks at Turnchapel on fire. That blaze raged for 5 days, and you could see it for miles around. And on the right, look at that, the skeletal remains of a hangar at the RAF base. This wasn't random bombing. It was a very calculated attack, trying to cripple the local military machine.
But you know, for every big strategic target that got hit, there were just countless stories of near misses for regular people. Listen to this recollection from a Mrs. Ivy Cox. It is absolutely chilling. She talks about a huge piece of a bomb tearing right through her home, missing her and her baby by just inches. It's stories like that that really ground the massive scale of the war in one terrifying, intensely personal moment.
So you have these terrifying nights, but life can't just stop, right? In between the air raids was the grinding reality of the daytime. The whole community had to adapt to a totally new normal, one that was all about scarcity, rules, and just huge daily challenges.
And these 2 little documents, they basically ran your life. Your national identity card, well, that proved you were who you said you were. But the ration book, this thing here, that decided what you could eat, what you could buy, everything. Every single person, from little kids to the elderly, had one. They were basically your keys to survival on the home front.
And just take a look at what survival actually meant. This table breaks down a typical weekly ration for one person. Seriously, think about this. Less than 2 ounces of cheese for a whole week. A couple slices of bacon. This wasn't about what you felt like eating. It was about making every single last crumb count. The whole country was on a strict diet, a shared sacrifice that the war demanded.
So, you're faced with terror at night and deprivation during the day. How on earth does a community get through that? Well, they don't just endure it, they organize. They find new ways to pull together, to keep morale up, and to fight back in whatever way they could.
And this newspaper headline just says it all, doesn't it? Plymstock makes a brave show. This was not a community hiding in fear. Not at all. They were out there, actively and publicly showing their resolve. These events, like Salute the Soldier Week, they were part parade, part fundraiser, but mostly they were a huge, powerful statement that their spirit was absolutely not going to be broken.
And you saw this spirit pop up in all kinds of ways. They held community dances and concerts, and these weren't just for fun, they were acts of defiance. They had special fundraising weeks to raise money for bombers or to support the troops. Everybody chipped in, from the women's guilds to the local youth clubs. This massive collective effort, that was the glue that held the whole community together. So when you look back at a time of such incredible hardship, but also such incredible resilience, it kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? How does a community remember its darkest hours? Because it's one thing to just survive history. It's another thing entirely to remember it, to learn from it, and to really understand how ordinary people, when they're faced with the absolute unthinkable, somehow find the strength to make a brave show.